It's a technique. It won't always give you the exact correct answer. There are multiple potential strengtheners or weakeners or things that must be true. So you're not always going to predict it exactly. But pre-phrasing is one way to show yourself that you're reading actively and that you're anticipating where the argument might go. And of course, when you're thinking about what the conclusion might be or what other inferences might be, there are many possibilities, of course.
Okay.
But so don't be too narrow in thinking this is the only possible answer, but do look for what you're do look for your prediction in the choices.
Okay.
And then the other thing I just wanted to comment on is making sure, of course, you do go through all 5 choices.
Yeah, that's definitely something I got to be mindful of. And another thing I kind of found out, it's not really a question, it's more of like a statement to the class. I noticed in your YouTube videos, I don't know if you noticed this yourself, but when you're going through the questions, you don't necessarily look for the right answer right away. You do a process of elimination and you negate all the answers that could be wrong, and that usually leads you to the right answer. So something that's helped me in the beginning of my prep, I would read through the answer choices and try to find the one that's correct out of the 5. But statistically, it's easier to find 4 wrong than 1 right. So what I've been doing now on questions that have been giving me trouble is I've been eliminating the answers that I for sure know are wrong to narrow down to fewer answers and kind of find the answer through those. So just to summarize, I'm not really looking for the right answer right away. I'm more so looking for the wrong answers, and then the right answer comes up.
That's interesting that you noted that. Are you referring to games or another section?
Mostly games, but I also find that it works in other sections too. Again, I'll pre-phrase, and then let's say the answer choice is completely left field to where my pre-phrase is, then I'll have a pretty good understanding that that's probably not the right answer. So I'll cross that off and then move on.
Yeah, I think that's a great observation. I personally love process of elimination. This is a multiple choice test.
Yeah.
And that's a technique we can use to our advantage.
Yeah.
Anyone else have success with process of elimination or have a different take on it?
I just want to add, I agree with what Priscilla was saying. You kind of want to pre-phrase ahead of time, or at least I try to, especially on a weekend question. I find myself, whenever I know it's a weekend question, I'm like, the argument either failed something, ignored a possibility of something. So I kind of just am already ready to kind of see what is going on. And I notice if I try to look at the answer choices first, I get more confused if I don't have a solid understanding of what the question is asking. So I try to at least make sure I have a good understanding of what the question is asking, and I'm strong mentally before moving into the answer choices, before I get trapped into really not understanding. So I just wanted to add that.
Well, thanks for adding that, Adrian. Anyone else have comments on pre-phrasing or process of elimination for games or other parts of the exam? No? All right. Jacob, any other questions or any other thing?
Another quick question on reading comprehension. In your videos, you stated that the people who score well on reading comprehension take few notes and they don't really highlight all over their page. And another thing they do is, I'm not sure if I understood this correctly, but they answer the questions backwards. So they'll answer the questions and they'll answer the question, the stimulus backwards, essentially, right? Because you said that the first questions are usually the hardest and the last questions are the easiest. Is that correct?
Not exactly. So your comment on the note taking is correct. Typically on reading comp, the fewer notes you take, the better.
Okay.
No, not as much. I would tend away from highlighting and underlining. Then your comment on order of approach for the questions, I wouldn't say do them in the opposite order. Instead, I would say do them in the order that makes sense. So there's a way that you can go back doing them from general questions like main point, primary purpose, passage organization, then the detail-oriented questions, then finally the more inferential questions. This isn't end to beginning or doing anything backwards, but this does involve a bit of jumping around.
Yeah, so you have to essentially look at the questions and determine which ones do you think are the easier ones to knock out and then go from there, right?
Correct, yeah.
Okay, all right. That makes more sense.
Now, a question that might arise from this, of course, is with the digital LSAT, does that change anything with regard to note-taking or with regard to jumping around? And Jocelyn, you have a comment, question? Let's make sure that, okay, yeah, please.
Or you're about to answer this question, but I wanted to add, that was one of my questions that I was going to ask you tonight. You have your method of like AEV, like you to write it on the side, but you can't do that. So that was going to be my question today of like how to supplement that. Cause it actually worked for me to be like author one, author, but you know what I'm trying to say? Like, I guess I wanted an update for digital.
Yeah, totally. Great question. I'll cover that as well.
That's my question.
Yeah, sure. So basically for digital, how does that change things? I would still recommend diagramming very little or not at all. Highlighting, underlining. The annotation tools on the digital LSAT are not that reliable. The stylus does not work very well with the digital LSAT in particular, so you might want to use your finger instead. But best of all would simply be write things on the side, right? But write very minimally. And so the diagramming technique I recommend is A for advocate, V for viewpoint, E for evidence. Obviously on digital, you can't do that on the tablet itself, but you can on your scratch paper, just write those things down in the order in which they appear. So you could write down, let's say 1, 2, 3, 4 for the 4 paragraphs of the passage. Then next to 1, you could write down AEV if the order in which things appear is advocates, evidence, viewpoints. You don't need to comprehensively list every single time an advocate appears or every single time a viewpoint appears, but you could mark down the main time, the most important times they appear, and note, of course, if there's a key point where they summarize the author's opinion, for example. Thanks for tuning into the show. Please subscribe if you haven't done so already to be notified of new episodes as I release them, and feel free to reach out if you need anything at all as you move forward with your prep. I'm happy to help however I can. In the meantime, I'll wish you all the best and take care.